Azarath, Metreon, Sin... Dang it! I lost my concentration. I really wish I had something to help with that. Tired of losing concentration on spells? Needing some extra power on your saves? Then I have just the thing for you. For the low cost of an ability score improvement, you too can save even the toughest saves with your choice of either Resilient or Warcaster. Resilient or Warcaster? Which one's good for me? Ha ha ha, great question. Let me explain. The age-old question, Warcaster or Resilient for my character? You know, I myself have pondered this for many hours and decided to take a look at the research behind it and figure out which one is best for which situation. Which is great for you guys, as it means you guys get to hear all about the research and findings I had. Now, before we go into the actual data, we really should talk about what Warcaster and Resilient is and what it is used for. Both of these are feats that you get at level 4, level 8, level 12, and so on. But what's important about them is they help out with concentration checks when you're concentrating on a spell. Warcaster is most notable for giving you advantage on concentration saving checks, but it also allows you to have a weapon in both hands and to be able to use a spell when you're making an opportunity attack. Both really good if you're in the front lines. Meanwhile, Resilient's a little bit more straightforward and giving you a +1 to your con and giving you proficiency at all your Constitution saving throws, which includes your concentration saving throws. Both have great uses. Warcaster's advantage means you're very rarely going to roll a 1 on your Constitution saving throw, but with Resilient and getting proficiency, you're going to get anywhere from a +2 to a +6 to your saving throw, so even if you do roll a 1, you have a chance you're still going to meet the DC. Therefore, the common assumption is Warcaster is great for those with a low con modifier, and Resilient is better for those with a high con modifier. But let's take a look and see how true that actually is. So let's look at an example. Say you have a Constitution modifier of 14, and you have calculated the average damage per hit at each level, which I have done for you on the monster calculator on my website. Feel free to check it out. Now, you take a hit, and you have Warcaster or Resilient. Which one is going to increase your chances for the save? Well, statistically, Warcaster is going to outperform Resilient between levels 1 through 10, but immediately after at levels 11 through 20, Resilient is going to take over as helping you save the most. This is most likely because the DCs just keep getting higher and higher, and it's really cool how it splits right in the middle. But this means that a good rule of thumb is, at level 6 or 7, you want to do Warcaster. But if you're going above 6 or 7, you're probably going to want to do Resilient because you're going to get more use out of it over the long term. And there you go. That's the whole video. Please be sure to like and subscribe. Oh wait, there's actually a little bit more to cover. So let's talk about it now. For instance, what happens if your con is above a 14 or below a 14? Well, the facts are really interesting about it. For example, let's say you have a con of 12 or lower. Well, between level 5 and higher, Resilient is going to outperform Warcaster every single time. And the reason why is most likely due to the fact that DCs start bumping up at level 5 and higher, and so you're going to need that proficiency bonus more than, say, a +1 with advantage. So the assumption that you should take Resilient if you have a low con is actually true. And vice versa is also true. If you have a Constitution of 18+, then Warcaster is going to outperform Resilient all the way to level 13, where at level 13 you'll get a +5 to your proficiency modifier. And this is most likely due to the fact that +5 is just very consistent, while advantage with Warcaster just has a lot of variance behind it, so the consistency outperforms the variance. But that is not all these do. As we have talked about, there are secondary effects between Resilient and Warcaster. Resilient gives you a +1 to your con modifier, and Warcaster allows you to use weapons and cast spells while also being able to cast spells as an opportunity attack, which is usually a deciding factor for a lot of gish builds. How much more important is Warcaster for gish builds than Resilient? It's the age-old question that you hear all the time as shown here, here, and here. But in truth, it's only relevant between levels 5 through 15. And the reason why is Warcaster outperforms Resilient by far between levels 1 through 4, and Resilient outperforms Warcaster by far between levels 16 through 20. This means you should only decide if these factors are relevant between levels 5 through 15. Anything outside of that is just not worthy. Now, for those who are unaware, gish builds are usually frontline spellcasters. This can be stuff like Eldritch Knight, Blade Singer, or even Paladins. All use spellcasting, but also prefer being on the front line using a weapon. Now, As anyone who's played D&D knows, it gets a little hard calculating what happens in a battle. So I got a little lazy and shortened it by giving an example. For the example, I assumed you're a gish build, and a gish build usually relies on damage more than support. So from there, I calculated how often opportunity attacks happen as well as the damage increase from using a spell rather than a weapon attack. Meanwhile, for resilient, I used how often you're able to concentrate on spells longer, as well as having that increase in tankiness due to your health increase. For the inflict damage, I used the spell inflict wounds and see how that's scaled throughout all the levels. Meanwhile, for resilient, I used the spell flame blade and used that to compare the examples of damage outputs. They're pretty comparable in both attack power. Once the steps were taken care of, I calculated the average DPR increase you would get if you used inflict wounds in combat as a reaction, versus how often you are to keep this spell up using resilient. Wake up, I'm getting to the good part. Now here's the fun part. If you can reliably get off that opportunity attack almost every battle, then what you're going to see is about a 29% increase into your damage. But if you can't do that, you're going to want to go resilient, as resilient gives you a 23% due to you being able to concentrate on spells better as well as having more hit points. Therefore, when comparing the two, if you can reliably get an opportunity attack almost every battle, or if you're a person who uses a shield and a sword, you're going to want to choose Warcaster. But if you're someone who can keep a hand free or saved a little bit further back, you're going to want to choose Resilient even if you are that gish build. Some good examples for Warcaster is going to be Oath of Vengeance Paladin or the Hexblade Warlock. Meanwhile, classes that like Resilience is going to be College of Valor Bard and Blade Singers. To summarize a different way, if you usually lean a little bit more back and rely on spells more, you're going to want to go Resilience. But if you are a person who prefers being in that front lines where you're constantly taking damage, you're actually going to want to go Warcaster. And there you have it, Warcaster or Resilience. Which one is better for you? Hopefully this gave you a good rule of thumb to follow and gave you some really cool tidbits that you like to use. By the way, if you want the infographic going over the rules of thumb for Resilient versus Warcaster, you can go to my link down below that gets it sent to your email for free. Or you can support the channel by getting my Wizard Subclasses book. It's over 50 pages long going over all the details I have learned on Wizards, and a lot of people seem to like it. Well, that's all this week here at Wizard of the Tavern. Please be sure to leave a like and subscribe. And I would love if you left a comment down below talking about what you guys thought of Resilient versus Warcaster. I hope you have a wonderful day, and may all your rolls be natural.